husband and I live in the countryside. We have two wonderful sons, Mark, who is 8, and Joseph, who will soon turn 6. All my life, I dreamed of having a daughter. Don't get me wrong, I love my sons and am very proud of them, but ever since childhood, I've dreamt of having a daughter. After many visits to doctors, examinations, and tests, we discovered a shocking truth after my last childbirth. I could no longer have children. This news devastated me, and seeing me in such a state, my husband and children called a family meeting. After long discussions and making decisions together as a family, we all agreed that since we couldn't have another child ourselves, we would adopt a girl. All the paperwork was completed, and we had already decided who would join our family. It was a wonderful girl named Annabelle, 7 years old, very sweet. She reminded me of the sun, as if she glowed from within. Everything was wonderful. Joseph's birthday was approaching, and we were preparing a grand celebration, but it was not meant to happen. One rainy autumn evening, my husband and I went out to buy the remaining items for the party balloons, order the cake, etc., set, leaving the younger children under Mark's supervision. When we returned, it was already very late, past midnight, so we entered the house quietly to avoid waking the children. After turning off the TV in the living room, probably Mark had been watching and forgot to turn it off. As usual, we went upstairs to the bedroom. Once upstairs, we decided to check on the children. We went to Mark's room, but it was empty. The bed was disheveled, and there was a mess around. Terrified, we ran to the other rooms, but neither Joseph nor Annabelle were there, only chaos. We were horribly frightened, with terrible images running through our minds. Then, from our room, we heard a faint rustle, as if someone was turning the pages of a book. We rushed to the door. What we saw there, I will never forget. By the bed, opposite the window, lay Joseph's mutilated body. He was covered in blood and seemed to have been gnawed or bitten. And in the far corner sat Annabelle, with her back to us. I ran to her and wanted to hug her, but she wasn't scared. She was just sitting and eating our beloved Mark. She turned her head towards me, chewing greedily. Her eyes gleamed in the darkness, glowing like some mad creatures. She looked at me and said, "Mommy, don't you love me?" I started to back away towards my husband, who was sobbing over Joseph, and she crawled after me, watching my every move intently. The police broke down the door, and a stale smell poured out into the street. Neighbors had called them when the Johnson family stopped appearing. The police found 4 mutilated bodies, and amidst all this horror was the girl. She was sitting, staring at the bloodied bodies, and muttering continuously, "Mommy doesn't love me anymore." Once upon a time, there was a 20-year-old girl who loved everything paranormal. She lived alone, and to pass the time, she would spend her nights watching various creepy stories, videos, and horror movies. After watching Paranormal Activity, she decided to film herself at night, just in case. Maybe a ghost would touch her or a door would move. But none of that happened. It was much worse. In the morning, she woke up and looked around. Nothing was overturned, the door was in the same position, and everything seemed fine. After breakfast, she decided to watch the video. A few hours of peaceful sleep passed, and then at one point, the film seemed to freeze. The girl suddenly started staring into the camera, her eyes becoming very large and wild, and a terrifying red smile appeared on her face, almost stretching to her ears. It vaguely resembled the letter C, utterly insane and wild. This face stared into the camera for several hours, and then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The girl was very frightened by this, and when she turned off the video, she saw something horrible. Somehow, her desktop had changed to that frame from the video. All the images that were once wallpapers were now this horrifying face from the video, and all the sound files contained some kind of screeching and screaming. In a panic, she called her brother and explained the situation. He immediately came to her. At first, he didn't believe what his sister was saying, thinking it was just her wild imagination. But what he saw shocked him. It was exactly as she had described. He felt uneasy himself. Naturally, he quickly erased everything without a trace and stayed with his sister for a few days so she wouldn't be scared in the apartment. After that, there were no more incidents, but a year later, the girl called her brother in a terrible panic and told him that the thing had returned. The day before, she had been at a friend's birthday party and they had taken photos. In every photo, instead of her face, there was that wild and terrifying face. The brother was preoccupied with a girl at the time and struggled to recall what had returned. But with horror, he remembered and told his sister to delete it herself since it was so easy, and then hung up. The next day, the sister was found dead in her apartment with no apparent cause of death. After the sister's funeral, the brother received that photo from an anonymous email. One evening, an 8-year-old girl was at home watching TV with her mother. Suddenly, the screen started flickering, and an image of a ghostly woman in red inexplicably appeared on the screen. She was holding a sign with a message written in red ink. It said, "This is a special announcement. Parents, please send your children to bed immediately." The mother became anxious and told her daughter to go to bed. The girl protested, but her mother was adamant. She grabbed her daughter's hand and led her to the hallway. The girl reluctantly went upstairs to her bedroom and got into bed, while the mother returned to the living room. When she looked at the TV again, the woman on the screen was holding a new sign. It read, "Please wait." The mother patiently sat on the couch, waiting for the special announcement. After 5 minutes, she started to get bored. Then the woman on the screen showed a new sign. The message was small and difficult to read. The mother slowly approached the TV to make out what it said. The sign read, "Thank you. Your children are already dead." The mother was horrified. She ran up the stairs and burst into her daughter's bedroom. She sighed with relief when she saw her daughter lying in bed, covered with a blanket up to her neck. But then the mother noticed something was wrong. The blanket was completely still. Her daughter wasn't breathing. Slowly, she approached the bed and pulled back the blanket. She recoiled in horror and began to scream. On the pillow lay her daughter's severed head. The body was nowhere to be found. Over 500 children died that night. The police couldn't trace where the television signal came from, and the woman on the screen was never identified.